The alarm screamed through every corridor of the eternal horizon. Red emergency lights painted the walls in bloody strokes as Captain Ji-won Kim ran toward the bridge. Her boots hammered against the metal floor while crew members rushed past her, some carrying injured workers from the engine room. The smell of burnt electronics and something worse filled the air. "Report," Gi-won shouted as she reached the bridge. Her second officer looked up from his console, his face pale with fear. "Engine core containment failed. We have a major breach in sections 7 through 12. Life support is running on backup power." He paused, his hands shaking over the controls. "Captain, we're dead in space." Gi-won felt her stomach drop, but kept her face calm. 12,000 people were on this ship. Families, children, engineers, doctors, farmers. All of them were heading to New Terra to start a new life. Now they were floating helplessly in empty space, millions of miles from any help. She turned to Mireille Choi at the communications station. The young officer was barely 25, fresh from the academy, but her hands moved steadily across her controls. "Send out a distress signal. All frequencies, standard galactic emergency protocol." "Yes, Captain." Mireille's fingers flew across the keyboard. Within seconds, the signal was broadcasting into the darkness of space. A simple message repeated over and over: "Human colony ship in critical danger. Requesting immediate assistance. 12,000 lives at risk. Down in the engine room." Hyon Park stared at the destroyed core through the radiation-shielded window. His team stood behind him, waiting for orders. The containment chamber looked like a bomb had gone off inside it. Melted metal, shattered circuits, and twisted supports were all that remained of the powerful engine that had been pushing them toward their new home. "Can we fix it?" one of his engineers asked. Tohan pulled off his protective helmet and rubbed his face. "Not with what we have. We'd need a shipyard. Specialized parts, at least 3 months of work." He looked at the oxygen readout on his wrist display. "We have maybe 3 days of air left. For if we shut down non-essential sections and put people in cold sleep..." The engineer looked at the floor. "So we're hoping someone answers our call. It's all we can do." Hyon picked up his tools anyway. Even if they couldn't fix the engine, maybe they could extend their life support a few more hours. Every minute counted. On the bridge, Mireille suddenly sat up straight. "Captain, I'm receiving a response to our distress call." Guan moved to stand behind her. "Already? From whom?" "The signal identifies them as the Vrin Collective. A patrol fleet operating in this sector." Mireille pressed a button, and a clicking, chittering voice filled the bridge. The translation software worked to convert the alien language into words they could understand. "This is Commander Telikver of the Vren Patrol Group 17. We have received your distress call." There was a sound like laughter, high-pitched and mocking. "How amusing. The Deathworlders have broken their primitive ship already. Tell me, did you try to fly too close to a star? Or perhaps your crude technology simply fell apart?" Ji-won felt anger burn in her chest, but she kept her voice level. "Commander Telikver, we have 12,000 civilians aboard this vessel. Our life support is failing. Under galactic law, you are obligated to provide assistance to ships in distress." More clicking laughter came through the speakers. "Galactic law? You mudball primitives barely understand space travel, and you dare speak to us about law?" The Vren commander's voice turned cold. "Your kind should have stayed on your savage planet. Earth, isn't it called? A nightmare world of crushing gravity, violent weather, and deadly creatures. Only the desperate or stupid would evolve there." Other voices joined in the laughter. Quan could hear the entire Vren bridge crew mocking them. "We will not waste our resources on rescuing you," Telikver continued. "Consider this a lesson about venturing beyond your capabilities. Perhaps the next generation of humans will be wiser. If there is a next generation..." Signal cut off. Silence filled the bridge. Mireille looked back at Ji-won with tears in her eyes. "Captain, they're sharing our distress call on the galactic networks. They're making entertainment out of our situation." Guan wanted to scream. She wanted to cry. But she was the captain, and 12,000 people were looking to her for hope. "Keep broadcasting the distress signal. Someone else might hear us. Someone with actual honor." Dr. Salman Lee worked in the medical bay, treating burns and radiation exposure from the engine room accident. 12 crew members had been caught in the initial blast. She'd managed to save most of them, but 3 were in critical condition. She worked with quick, efficient movements, her years of training taking over, even as fear sat like ice in her stomach. A nurse approached her. "Doctor, I'm hearing rumors. Is it true no one is coming to help us?" Soman didn't stop working on her patient. "Keep your focus on the job. We save who we can, for as long as we can." The oxygen levels dropped slowly but steadily. Giwan ordered non-essential sections sealed off and reduced life support to minimum levels. People were cold and scared, but alive. Parents held their children tight. Engineers worked on impossible repairs. Doctors treated the injured. Murray stayed at her station, monitoring every frequency, hoping for a miracle. The Vren fleet remained nearby, their sensors watching the eternal horizon like carrion birds waiting for death. Several other alien ships passed through the sector. None answered the distress call. The word had spread. These were Deathworlders, primitives, not worth the effort. On the second day, with 48 hours of oxygen remaining, Murray's console beeped. Her tired eyes focused on the display. Multiple contacts were appearing on long-range sensors. Ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Big ships. Moving fast. "Captain," she said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I'm reading 12 vessels. Military configuration. They're broadcasting Terran Defense Coalition identification codes." Giwan stood up from her chair, her heart pounding. "The Navy." "Yes, Captain." Murray's hands were shaking as she read the data. "Fleet designation, Task Force 7, flagship, Indomitable Will." She looked back at Giwan, tears streaming down her face now. "They came for us." Through the view screen, Giwan could see lights in the distance, 12 points of brightness, growing larger. The human fleet was here. And from the sensor readings, they were heading straight for the Vren patrol group. The bridge of the Indomitable Will was quiet and cold. Admiral Daeon Yoon stood in the center, his arms crossed, watching the main display screen. His face was carved from stone, showing no emotion. But everyone on the bridge could feel the anger radiating from him like heat from a furnace. "Play it again," he said quietly. Lieutenant Jean Wunom pressed a button. The mocking voice of Commander Tlekvar filled the bridge once more, laughing about the dying humans, calling them primitives and mudball savages. When it finished, silence returned. "Sir," Jinwoo said carefully, "we're in weapons range of the Vren patrol group. They're still holding position near the eternal horizon. 6 vessels, light cruiser class." Daeyoon nodded slowly. He was 15 years old and had spent 40 of those years in space. He'd fought in the First Contact War when humanity discovered they weren't alone in the universe. He'd seen friends die in the cold darkness. He'd learned that the galaxy was not a friendly place for newcomers, especially humans. "Surround them," he ordered. "Full combat formation. I want them to understand exactly how much trouble they're in." The 12 ships of Task Force 7 moved with precise coordination. They were not as large as the massive dreadnoughts some alien races built, but they were fast and armored like tanks. Human engineers had built them to survive, just like everything else from Earth. Commander Surahan sat in her fighter bay, checking her equipment one more time. Her squadron of 36 fighters was ready to launch on her command. She'd been asleep when the distress call came through, but now she was wide awake and angry. The thought of families suffocating in space while aliens laughed made her blood boil. "All pilots, this is Wing Commander," she said into her helmet radio. "Stay ready. If this goes bad, we're going in hot," her pilots acknowledged. Every one of them had volunteered for this duty. Every one of them had taken an oath to protect human lives, anywhere, anytime, no matter the cost. On the Vren command ship, Tlikfer watched the human fleet approach with growing nervousness. He'd heard stories about humans, of course. Everyone had. The Deathworlders who came from a nightmare planet. The species that evolved fighting and killing each other for millions of years. The ones who ate poison for pleasure and kept predators as pets. But they were still primitive. They'd only achieved faster-than-light travel 80 years ago. The Vren Collective had been traveling the stars for 5,000 years. Numbers and experience had to count for something. Incoming transmission from the human flagship, his communications officer reported. "Let's hear what the primitives have to say," Lekver said. Trying to sound confident, the screen flickered, and Admiral Dayun's face appeared. His dark eyes seemed to look directly into Tlikver's soul. When he spoke, his voice was calm and cold as deep space. "Commander Tlikver, my name is Admiral Dayun of the Terran Defense Coalition. I'm going to play something for you." Slikler's own voice came through the speakers. His mocking words about the dying colonists, his laughter, his refusal to help. When it finished, Dayun spoke again. "You have one chance to correct your mistake. You will immediately dispatch rescue teams to the Eternal Horizon. You will provide them with whatever supplies and equipment they need. You will do this with respect and professionalism. If you refuse, you will learn why Earth is called a death world." Lekver felt his mandibles click in anger. How dare this primitive threaten him? The Vren Collective controlled dozens of systems. Their military was vast and powerful. These humans had 12 ships. "Admiral, you are in Vren-controlled space. You have no authority here. Leave now, or I will call for reinforcements and have you destroyed." For a long moment, Dayon said nothing. Then he smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "Lieutenant Nam, weapons free. Target their engines first. I want them alive to witness what comes next." The connection cut off. Tlikver barely had time to shout orders before alarms screamed through his ship. The human vessels were locking weapons on his fleet. Aboard the Eternal Horizon, Captain Jiwan watched the confrontation unfold on her sensors. A small human shuttle detached from the fleet and approached her ship. "Captain. Incoming vessel requesting docking permission," Murray reported. "They're broadcasting repair and rescue codes. Grant them access to Bay 3. The shuttle docked, and a dozen human engineers in heavy work suits poured out. They moved with purpose and efficiency, carrying equipment and supplies. Hyun Park met them at the bay entrance. "You boys took your time," he said with a tired smile. The lead engineer, a woman built like a wrestler, grinned back. "Had to make a scenic route. Don't worry, we brought the good stuff." She gestured to her team. "We've repaired ships in radiation zones, in asteroid fields, and once inside a star's corona. A simple engine core? That's a Tuesday for us." Hyun felt hope surge in his chest for the first time in 2 days. "The core is completely destroyed. We know what you need. We brought a mobile reactor to get your life support back to full power. That'll buy us time to jury-rig your engine. Won't be pretty, but it'll get you to New Terra." She clapped him on the shoulder. "We take care of our own, brother. Now show us what we're working with." Space. The standoff continued. The Lekver had called for reinforcements, and they arrived quickly. 30 Vren warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel surrounding the human fleet. Now the numbers were heavily in the Vren's favor. "Human fleet, this is your final warning," Tlikver broadcast. "You are outnumbered 3-1. Surrender your vessels, and we may show mercy." "Well, sir, they have us badly outnumbered." Dayon studied the tactical display. The Vren ships were positioning themselves in a standard attack formation. Textbook military strategy, the kind taught in academies across the galaxy. Safe, predictable, boring. "Sergeant Konk," Dayon said into his communicator. Sergeant Borum Kong stood in the ship's marine bay with her squad of 200 soldiers. They were in full combat armor, weapons loaded, ready for boarding operations if needed. Sir, if we need to take Vren prisoners, can you do it without killing too many? Borum smiled inside her helmet. Sir, we can take prisoners, or we can be gentle. Pick one. Fair point. Stand by. Dayon turned back to the main screen. He opened a channel to the entire Vren fleet, and to every ship in sensor range. He wanted witnesses. Commander Tleekver, you asked me why Earth is called a death world. Let me explain. On Earth, the gravity is twice what your species experiences. Our atmosphere is poisonous to most galactic species. Our oceans are acidic. Our weather includes storms that can level cities. Our wildlife includes predators that hunt in packs, insects that carry deadly diseases, and plants that can kill you with a touch. He paused, letting his words sink in. We evolved in that environment. We survived it. We thrived in it. Our bodies are dense and strong. Our immune systems can fight off almost anything. Our minds are adapted to solve problems under extreme stress. We built our technology not for comfort but for survival. Our ships aren't elegant. They're weapons. Just like us. Daeyun leaned forward. You mocked humans, calling for help. You laughed while families were dying. Now, you'll learn what happens when you threaten Deathworlders. Show them. The human fleet opened fire. The first Vren ship to fire was the cruiser Eternal Glory. It launched a spread of plasma torpedoes. Bright blue streaks of superheated matter that would vaporize most vessels on contact. The missiles struck the human destroyer Relentless directly on its bow. The Relentless shuddered from the impact. Plasma washed over its hull, burning away paint and scoring the armor. But the ship kept moving forward, its armor barely dented. The Vren weapons were designed to fight other Vren ships, other species who built vessels for speed and elegance. Human ships were built like Earth itself, dense, heavy, and almost impossible to break. Return fire, Dayon ordered calmly. The indomitable Will's main railgun fired. A tungsten rod no bigger than a telephone pole was accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed using magnetic coils. It crossed the distance between ships in less than a second and struck the Eternal Glory dead center. The Vren cruiser simply ceased to exist. The kinetic impact released energy equivalent to a nuclear weapon. Metal, electronics, and the bodies of 200 VIN crew members were vaporized instantly. Debris expanded outward in a rapidly growing sphere of destruction. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. The Vren fleet stared in horror at the empty space where their ship had been. Then chaos erupted. All ships, evasive action. Tleekver screamed into his communicator. Scatter and attack from multiple angles. The Vren fleet broke formation, ships accelerating in different directions. Their captains were experienced military officers who'd fought in a dozen campaigns. They knew how to adapt to new threats. They spread out to divide the human fleet's attention and began firing from multiple vectors. Commander. Sura watched the battle unfold from her fighter bay. All squadrons, launch. Protect the fleet and engage enemy fighters. Her fighter shot out of the launch tube and into open space. Behind her, 35 more human fighters followed. They were small, angular craft that looked more like weapons than vehicles. Because that's exactly what they were. Vren fighters moved to intercept. They were beautiful machines, sleek and curved, powered by advanced gravity drives. They danced through space with grace and precision. Their pilots were well-trained and confident. It didn't matter. Sora pulled 7 Gs in a turn that would have killed a Vren pilot. Her fighters' inertial dampeners could only do so much, but human bodies were tough. She felt the pressure grunted against it and completed the maneuver perfectly. Her targeting computer locked onto a Vren fighter, and she fired her missiles. The Vren pilot tried to evade, but Sura had already calculated his escape route. The missiles adjusted course and struck home. Another explosion lit up the darkness of space. 2 incoming. 6 o'clock. Her wingman called, "I see them." Sura spun her fighter through a barrel roll that should have been impossible, pushed her engines to maximum, and came up behind her pursuers. 2 more quick shots. 2 more kills. This is too easy. They fly like they're scared to damage their ships. They probably are, her wingman replied, destroying another enemy fighter. We build ours to take hits. They build theirs to look pretty. The main battle was not going well for the Vren. Their standard tactics involved long-range engagements where they could use their advanced sensors and precision weapons. But human ships kept pushing forward, absorbing damage that should have destroyed them and getting close enough for devastating railgun shots. The Vren destroyer, Crimson Blade, fired its particle beam, a concentrated stream of accelerated ions that could melt through most armor. It struck the human frigate Vengeful across its side. The beam burned deep, destroying several compartments and killing 12 crew members. The Vengeful didn't retreat. Its captain ordered emergency bulkhead closures, sealed off the damaged sections, and kept fighting. The frigate's missile tubes opened, launching a wave of chemical propulsion warheads. The Vren considered such weapons primitive and crude. They were right. They were also dead. The missiles weren't designed for precision. They were designed to deliver the maximum amount of explosive force to a target. 12 warheads struck Crimson Blade and detonated. The Vren destroyer's shields overloaded, its armor cracked, and atmosphere vented from a dozen breaches. It tumbled out of formation, dying but not yet dead, aboard the Eternal Horizon. Hune and the rescue engineers worked in the destroyed engine room. They'd hooked up the mobile reactor to the ship's power grid, and life support was back at full capacity. Now came the hard part, repairing the engine. This is insane, one of Hyan's crew said, staring at the rescue team leader. She was inside the radiation-flooded containment chamber, wearing only a basic protection suit, working with tools that glowed from the heat. She's going to get herself killed, another engineer said. No, she won't. Hyun checked his radiation monitor. The levels in that chamber would give most species fatal poisoning in minutes. The human engineer had been in there for 20 minutes and would probably work for another hour. Humans from Earth are tough. Their bodies handle radiation better than ours. They evolved on a planet with a weaker magnetic field, so they got hit with more cosmic radiation for millions of years. They adapted. That's horrifying. That's why we're alive. The battle continued. The Vren fleet was now down to 23 ships. The human fleet had lost no vessels, though several were badly damaged. Flycover stared at his tactical display in disbelief. This was impossible. His fleet had superior numbers, better technology, and experienced crews. How were the humans winning? Sir, the human fighters are tearing through our squadrons, his tactical officer reported. They're pulling maneuvers our pilots can't match. The G-forces alone should be lethal, and their ships? They're barely slowing down from our weapons fire. It's like shooting rocks at a mountain. Tlekfer made a decision. All ships, full retreat. Jump to hyperspace on my mark. But Admiral Daeun had anticipated this. His fleet had positioned themselves to cut off the most direct escape routes. As Vren ships tried to break away and charge their faster-than-light drives, human vessels intercepted them. Railguns fired. Missiles launched. More Vren ships died. Please. Click for broadcast on all frequencies. We surrender. Stop firing. Daeon held up his hand. Cease fire. The human weapons fell silent. The Vren fleet, what remained of it, floated in space. 15 ships were destroyed. 8 were heavily damaged in venting atmosphere. 7 were still combat-capable, but surrounded by human vessels. Commander Tilikvar, Daeun said, you will now provide assistance to the Eternal Horizon, as originally requested. Your engineers will work under human supervision. Your medical teams will treat any injured colonists. You will do this quickly and respectfully. Refuse, and we will resume fire. Do you understand? Yes. Tlekver whispered. We understand. Over the next 6 hours, Vren and human engineers worked together to complete repairs on the Eternal Horizon. The Vren workers moved carefully, aware that human soldiers watched their every move. Sergeant Borum and her Marines were stationed throughout the ship. Weapons ready, expressions hard. Dr. Salmon met with the Vren medical team. They were insectoid beings, with multiple arms and compound eyes. They looked at her with something like fear. Thank you for coming, Salman said quietly. I have patients who need specialized treatment for radiation exposure. Your species has more advanced medical technology than we do. I would appreciate your help. The lead Vren doctor clicked his mandibles nervously. You're thanking us? After what we did? You're here now. You're helping. That's what matters. Salman gestured to the medical bay. Shall we begin? On the bridge of the Eternal Horizon, Captain Juan stood beside Admiral Dayun. They watched the repairs progress on the main screen. You didn't have to come, Juan said. Your fleet must have been days away. You were 6 days away, Dayan confirmed. We pushed our engines beyond safe limits to get here. Several ships need major repairs now, he looked at her. But we couldn't let the call go unanswered. We couldn't let other species think human lives don't matter. Thank you, Admiral. No thanks necessary, Captain. We take care of our own, he pointed to the Vren ships. As for them, I'm letting most of them go. I want them to spread the word about what happens when you threaten humans. But Tlikver and his senior officers will face trial on Earth if the repairs were completed. The Eternal Horizon's engines came online, not at full power, but enough to reach New Terra. The colonists cheered. Children hugged their parents. People cried tears of relief and joy as the human fleet prepared to escort the colony ship to its destination. Long-range sensors detected something new. Ships were arriving from all over the sector. Not military vessels. News ships. Observer craft from a dozen different species. They'd heard about the battle and come to see the aftermath. Sir Jinwoo reported, we're being broadcast across galactic networks. Everyone is watching.
Aya nodded.
Good. Let them watch. Let them learn. He opened a channel to all frequencies, knowing that billions of beings across the galaxy would hear his words. To all species listening, humanity will protect its own. We will answer distress calls. We will defend the innocent. And we will show no mercy to those who mock the dying. Remember this day. Remember what Deathworlders can do. He closed the channel and turned to his crew. Take us to New Terra. Let's finish what we started. New Terra was beautiful. From orbit, it looked like a younger version of Earth, with blue oceans, green continents, and white clouds. The Eternal Horizon descended through the atmosphere with the protection of the human fleet. And 12,000 colonists saw their new home for the first time, Captain. Captain Schwan stood on the landing pad as families disembarked. Children ran across the grass, laughing and shouting. Parents looked around with wonder and relief. Engineers immediately began setting up equipment for the terraforming operations that would make this world even more suitable for human life. Thank you again. Admiral Juan said as Dayan prepared to depart. We wouldn't be here without you. You would have found a way. Humans always do. Dayan looked at the colonists spreading across the landing zone. Build something good here, Captain. Make this world worth the fight we had to reach it.
I will.
I promise. The fleet departed for Earth, leaving behind 2 destroyers to protect the colony during its vulnerable first months. As Jiwon watched the ships disappear into the sky, she felt a mixture of emotions. Relief, gratitude, and something else. Pride. Pride in being human. On Earth. In the capital city of Geneva, where the Terran Coalition maintained its headquarters, the political situation was explosive. The battle had been broadcast across the galaxy. Reactions were coming in from hundreds of species and governments. Ambassador Taeyong Shin sat in his office, reviewing messages. Some were supportive. Small, peaceful species expressed gratitude that someone was willing to stand up to bullies. Others were threatening. The Vren Collective had filed formal complaints and was demanding reparations for their destroyed ships. Several neutral powers were calling for sanctions against humanity for excessive use of force. His assistant knocked on the door. Sir, you have a visitor. A Kelith representative, Tai Yong, stood up quickly. The Kelith Empire was one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They rarely involved themselves in the affairs of younger species. Send them in. The being that entered was tall and crystalline, its body seeming to glow with internal light. It moved with an ancient grace that reminded Taeyong of walking forests or flowing water. When it spoke, Its voice sounded like music. Ambassador Shin, I am Observer Velrith. My government wishes to speak with you about recent events. I'm honored by your visit, Observer. Please, sit. The Keleth being settled into a chair that creaked under its unusual weight. Your species has made quite an impression on the galactic community. The battle is being discussed on every civilized world. Some admire your strength. Others fear it. The Keleth Empire wishes to ensure you understand the situation you now find yourselves in. We defended our people. Under galactic law is complex, Ambassador. Yes, distress calls should be answered. But the level of force you employed, the number of ships you destroyed, the message you sent, these things have consequences. Velrith leaned forward. Tell me, do you know why Earth was classified as a death world? Because of our environment. High gravity, dangerous weather, aggressive wildlife, that is part of it. But there is more. Velrith's crystalline body seemed to pulse with soft light. The Keleth have known about Earth for 3,000 years. We observed your species evolve, watched you develop technology, and saw you reach for the stars. We could have made contact at any time. We chose not to. Do you know why? Taeyong shook his head. Because we were afraid of you. The words hung in the air like a weight. Taeyong stared at the ancient being in shock. Afraid of us? Most galactic species evolved on gentle worlds. Stable climates, light gravity, peaceful ecosystems. We developed technology slowly, over millions of years, with few pressures forcing rapid adaptation. Your species evolved under constant threat. War, disease, predators, natural disasters. You developed tool use not for convenience, but for survival. You created civilization not from choice, but from necessity. Velrith stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. When we first observed humans, you were hunters. We watched you invent agriculture, writing, mathematics, and engineering. You went from simple stone tools to space travel in just 10,000 years. Do you understand how impossibly fast that is? Most species take 100 times longer. You practically exploded into space. But we're still newcomers to the galaxy. We have a lot to learn. I have nothing to learn about warfare. Velrith turned back to face him. That battle demonstrated what we feared. You built ships designed to survive, not to look impressive. You've trained soldiers who can endure conditions that would kill our warriors. You developed weapons focused on pure destructive power. And most terrifying of all, you did it naturally. This is simply how humans approach problems. Taeyong felt a chill run down his spine. What are you saying? I am saying that the galaxy now sees humanity as a potential threat. Some species will seek alliance with you, hoping to gain your protection or military power. Others will consider preemptive strikes, trying to eliminate you before you become too powerful. A few will do nothing and hope you destroy yourselves. The next few years will determine whether humanity becomes a great power or a cautionary tale. Back on New Terra, life was establishing a routine. Hyun oversaw the construction of the colony's power grid and infrastructure. His experience repairing the Eternal Horizon under impossible conditions had earned him a promotion to chief engineer of the colony. He worked 16-hour days, but felt more alive than ever. Dr. Soman ran the medical center, which was really just a large tent with equipment from the ship. She treated everything from construction injuries to alien parasites that some colonists had picked up from the local ecosystem. She also began training colonists in emergency medicine. Everyone needed to be ready for anything. Murray had been promoted to communications director for the colony. She maintained contact with Earth, coordinated supply shipments, and monitored galactic news. The news was troubling. While some species praised humanity's actions, others were forming alliances against them. Captain Juwan Murray said one morning, I'm picking up increased military activity in nearby sectors. Several species are moving fleets toward human space. Quan, who now held the rank of admiral and commanded New Terra's defense, studied the reports with concern. Are they coordinating? It's hard to tell, but the timing seems suspicious. On Earth, Admiral Dayun met with military leadership and government officials. The mood in the conference room was tense. "We're receiving intelligence about potential attacks on our colonies," the defense minister said. "Multiple species, possibly coordinated. They see us as a threat and want to strike before we become stronger." "Then we need to make our position clear," Dayan said. "We need a formal doctrine that explains exactly how humanity will respond to threats and distress calls. Something every species in the galaxy can understand." Ambassador Taeyong spoke up via video link. Observer Velreth suggested something similar. He called it a Deathworld doctrine, a clear set of rules about human behavior that removes ambiguity and reduces fear. Over the next week, human leaders drafted the document. It was simple and direct. The Terran Coalition will protect all human lives, anywhere, using any force necessary. The Terran Coalition will respond to distress calls from any species, regardless of political alignment. The Terran Coalition will retaliate decisively against attacks on human colonies or ships. The Terran Coalition will show mercy to defeated enemies who surrender, but none to those who harm the innocent. "It's aggressive," the defense minister noted. "It's honest," Dayan replied. "The galaxy needs to know what we stand for. Uncertainty breeds fear. Clarity breeds respect." The doctrine was published on all galactic networks. Reactions were immediate and mixed. Some smaller species, those who had been bullied by larger powers, expressed hope. Several formally requested alliance with humanity, seeking protection. The Vren Collective and its allies called the doctrine a declaration of war. Neutral powers debated what it meant for galactic stability, but something else happened that no one expected. A dozen species sent messages asking for help. Distress calls from colonies under attack. Requests for aid against pirates. Pleas for intervention in territorial disputes. Humanity had proclaimed itself a protector, and the galaxy was testing whether they meant it. Lieutenant Jinwoo, now promoted to commander and assigned to intelligence analysis, brought the reports to Admiral Dayun. "Sir, we're receiving an average of 5 distress calls per day. We don't have the ships or personnel to respond to all of them. Then we respond to the ones we can. We prove that the doctrine isn't just words." Dejin looked at the star chart on his wall. "Deploy fleet groups to the nearest crisis points. Assign escorts to vulnerable colonies, and start recruiting more crews. We're going to need them." Deep in Vren's space, in a secret meeting room, Commander Tlikver sat with representatives from 8 other species. He had escaped custody during transport, fleeing before facing trial on Earth. Now he was angry, humiliated, and hungry for revenge. "The humans must be stopped," he said to the assembled group. "They're primitives who got lucky. One defeat doesn't mean they're invincible." A mercenary captain, a reptilian being from the score systems, nodded agreement. "My people will fight for the right price. Humans bleed like anyone else." The attacks came at dawn across 5 human colonies simultaneously. On New Terra, the first explosion woke Admiral Jiwan from sleep. She grabbed her uniform and ran to the command center, still pulling on her boots. "Ch!" she shouted as she entered. "Orbital bombardment," the tactical officer said, his voice tight with fear. 47 ships in orbit. Mixed species. They're targeting population centers and infrastructure. Guan looked at the display screen showing enemy ships raining fire on her colony. Explosions bloomed across the main settlement. People were dying. Her people. Sound evacuation alarms. "Get civilians to the underground shelters." "Where are our defense ships?" "The destroyers are engaging, but they're outnumbered 20 to 1. In space above New Terra, the 2 human destroyers fought desperately. They fired their railguns and missiles, destroying 3 enemy ships, but it wasn't enough. Return fire hammered their shields and armor. One destroyer, the Fearless, took a direct hit to its engine section and began tumbling out of control. On the ground, Sergeant Borum gathered her Marines. Most of the colony's military personnel were engineers and support staff, not combat troops. But she had 200 Marines and 3,000 colonists who knew how to use weapons. "Listen up," she shouted to the assembled group. "Enemy landing craft are incoming. They want to take this colony and kill everyone here. That's not going to happen. We're going to show these aliens what humans can do when we're defending our homes. Understood? Yes, Sergeant. The response came from Marines and civilians alike. The first landing craft touched down 2 miles from the main settlement. Alien mercenaries poured out, weapons ready. They advanced on the colony, expecting minimal resistance. Instead, they walked into a carefully prepared kill zone. Mining explosives, buried under the road, detonated. The blast killed dozens and threw the attack into chaos. Then the shooting started. Humans fired from buildings, trenches, and concealed positions. Every colonist knew how to shoot. Every position had been prepared over the past weeks after receiving warnings from Earth in the medical center. Dr. Soman organized triage. Wounded colonists were brought in on stretchers. She worked with quick, efficient movements, her training taking over. When a shell hit the building and collapsed part of the roof, she didn't stop working. She just moved her patients to a safer section and continued. "Doctor, we have 3 critical cases incoming," a nurse called out. "Prep surgery immediately. And someone get me more blood supplies from storage?" In the engineering sector, Heian had weaponized every piece of industrial equipment he could. Construction mechs, designed for lifting heavy materials, were now carrying improvised armor and massive welding torches that could melt through alien body armor. Mining lasers became anti-vehicle weapons. Even the terraforming equipment was rigged to release toxic chemicals on command. "Enemy forces are pushing toward the power station," one of his engineers reported. "Not for long." And activated the defense systems he'd been secretly installing for weeks. Automated turrets rose from concealed positions and opened fire. The enemy advance stopped cold, but the situation was desperate. More landing craft kept arriving. The colony's defenses were strong, but they couldn't hold forever. Giwan knew they needed help soon, or New Terra would fall. Admiral Murray said from the communications station, "I'm detecting multiple FTL signatures. Large vessels. Coming in fast, friend or foe? Transponder codes say, they're ours. It's the fleet. Admiral Dayan's fleet." The indomitable will dropped out of faster-than-light travel with 11 other ships. They'd pushed their engines beyond safe limits, risking catastrophic failure to reach New Terra in time. Admiral Dayun stood on his bridge, surveying the battle. "All ships, combat formation. Target the enemy fleet. Authorization for kinetic bombardment of enemy landing zones." The human warships opened fire. Railgun rounds tore through enemy vessels. Missiles streaked across space. The battle became a slaughter. The mercenary fleet, built for raiding and intimidation, couldn't stand against proper military vessels. Within 20 minutes, 35 enemy ships were destroyed. The survivors fled, but Dayan wasn't satisfied with just space superiority. "Lieutenant Nam, target the enemy ground forces. I want precision strikes on their landing zones. Avoid civilian areas." "Ah, sir. Some enemy units are very close to our people. The blast radius. I know the risks. Do it anyway. Our people on the ground are tough. They'll survive. The enemy won't." Tungsten rods fell from orbit like the wrath of an angry god. They struck the ground at terminal velocity, releasing energy equivalent to tactical nuclear weapons. The impacts vaporized enemy landing craft, destroyed mercenary positions, and created craters hundreds of feet wide. The shockwaves knocked colonists off their feet, but human bodies were built to absorb impacts. Most survived. The aliens didn't across the galaxy. Similar battles were taking place at 4 other human colonies. The story was the same everywhere. Enemy forces attacked, expecting easy victories. Human colonists fought back with improvised weapons and desperate courage. Human fleets arrived just in time, often damaged from pushing their engines too hard, and turned the tide. On the colony of Nova Haven, 3,000 colonists held off 8,000 mercenaries for 6 hours before the fleet arrived. On Armstrong Station, colonists evacuated into asteroid mines and used mining charges to collapse tunnels on pursuing enemies. On New Beijing, civilians used farming equipment as weapons, including crop dusters modified to spray industrial acid. Humanity didn't just survive the attacks, they won decisively. Commander Tlekver watched from a safe distance as his carefully planned assault collapsed. He'd gathered ships from a dozen species. He'd coordinated attacks across 5 targets. He'd done everything right according to standard military doctrine. And still he'd lost. How? He whispered, staring at the tactical displays showing his retreating forces. How are they so strong? His tactical officer, a young Vren who'd studied human history, answered quietly, because they come from a death world, sir. They didn't evolve in peace. They evolved in war. Every human alive is descended from billions of years of survivors. The weak died. Only the strongest, smartest, and most adaptable live to pass on their genes. They're not just tough. They're the product of the harshest natural selection in the known galaxy. Lickver slumped in his command chair. Then we can't beat them. No, sir. We can't. Days later, the Galactic Council convened for an emergency session. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to discuss the human situation. The attacks on human colonies had failed spectacularly, but they'd also proven that humanity was willing to use extreme force to protect its people. Ambassador Tai Yong stood before the council representing humanity. Behind him, Observer Velrith of the Keleth Empire watched with interest. The Terran Coalition did not seek conflict, Tai Yong began. We responded to attacks on our people. We upheld the Deathworld doctrine exactly as written. We protected our colonies. We showed mercy to those who surrendered. We eliminated those who refused to stop fighting. This is who we are. This is what we will always do. A representative from a peaceful species stood up. But Ambassador, your use of force was extreme. You dropped kinetic weapons near your own people. You destroyed entire fleets. Where is the restraint? Restraint? Taeyong's voice hardened. When someone attacks children in their sleep, where is the restraint? When someone tries to massacre civilians, where is the restraint? We showed restraint by allowing survivors to retreat. We showed restraint by not hunting down every mercenary across the galaxy. Don't confuse mercy for weakness. We could have done much worse. The council chamber erupted in arguments. Some species supported humanity. Others called for sanctions. A few demanded military action to contain the human threat. Observer Velrith stood up, and the chamber fell silent. When a Keleth spoke, everyone listened. The Keleth Empire has made a decision. We formally recognize humanity as a major power in galactic affairs. We offer them a seat on this council, and we offer an alliance should they choose to accept. Velrith looked around the chamber. Humanity is not a threat to peace. They are a response to those who threaten peace. Choose wisely how you treat them. The vote was held. By a narrow margin, humanity was granted council membership. 17 species immediately requested formal alliances. 30 more opened diplomatic channels. The galaxy had changed. On New Terra, life slowly returned to normal. The dead were buried with honor. The wounded healed human bodies, recovering faster than expected. Buildings were rebuilt. Defenses were strengthened. Admiral Guan stood at a memorial service. Looking at the names carved into a simple stone monument, 243 colonists had died in the attack. But they'd saved 12,000. They didn't die for nothing, Sergeant Borum said, standing beside her. They died protecting their home. That means something. Yes, it does. Ishine approached them, limping slightly from an injury. Admiral, the new defense grid is operational. If anyone attacks us again, they'll regret it. Murray joined the group holding a tablet. I'm receiving messages from colonies on other worlds. Non-human colonies. They're asking for human protection. They want us to help them. Jiwan looked up at the sky, where stars were beginning to appear in the evening.